I just wanted to give you a quick visual of that Truxor cut, because back in 2011, when we started to put our program together and try to figure out how we were actually going to tackle this particular invasive plant, again, it wasn't top of mind. And a year later, the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund, we actually were able to convince them to come over into southern Georgian Bay, eastern Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund. And we made an application, and we started off this community engagement program, which became a Canada 150 grant, but we had 4 years of sustained funding from Environment Canada. And that really allowed us to keep planning and keep going ahead. So when Catherine mentioned putting this as a line item in a budget, where we can kind of continue to keep these coherent plans moving forward, especially on something like this where it isn't one and done, that's really critically important for success. And a lot of the work that our team inside of Georgian Bay Forever has done has just been on communicating. So we've had many newsletters that you'll see posted up here, but over the years, or posts or things that come out on the web, just to educate people and get them going and build that community capacity, really, so that we can start looking at some of the more difficult stands that the community can't get to. And an example, just so you can see of the scale, like we're working in Collingwood all the way up to working with educating communities in the North Channel. Here's a before shot of Collingwood. You can see the silos in the background. And that's a bunch of about 25 volunteers and a full day of cutting. Pretty exhausting, but that's back to the cattails now. So that's all of the invasive plants removed and the original biodiversity immediately becoming apparent. So it's a really gratifying activity. If you haven't participated in a frag cut yet, we encourage you to look out for one next year. And we'll continue to try to teach and build that capacity up. But here's a little video of Lily Pond in Honey Harbor with the Truxors. That in the background is the stand of Phragmites. Here are the pieces of equipment on the truck coming in the morning. Connor, our team leader for the Student Ambassador Program this year. 18 feet tall, this Phragmites to begin with in the morning. When I first saw this stand, I thought there is absolutely no way we're going to be able to get rid of this unless we bring in chemicals and spray with helicopters and all that kind of stuff, which we didn't want to do. Bin City, Tom Fitzgerald was fantastic this year. He donated his time and the bins for the program. The Township of Georgian Bay provided an operator and the loader for a couple of days. And again, just some of the reference points in the background, the white building over there, you can start to see on day one, we immediately started to have an impact. And on day two, this was the pile that we got left over with because our bin hauler couldn't make it back and forth fast enough on day one. See the water already starting to come in? These machines were phenomenal. Like, we all wanted to drive them and get out and do the cutting, but and again, the building and the white car in the background. That's from the road looking back in. All the little bits and pieces that are in the water, they actually can filter out. They have like rakes that go through the water and cleaned it up, as you'll see. But we don't see much invasive Phragmites anymore, right? And now we're starting to rake out the water, and you can start actually seeing clean water coming back. So because the Phragmites can actually evaporate a lot of that water, just draw it right up into the plant and get rid of it, as soon as we get rid of the Phragmites, the water can actually show up again, and it doesn't get sucked out of the wetland. So pretty significant impacts. Over 2 days, we removed about 38,000 kilograms of Phragmites. And that would have taken a community of volunteers. Everybody in Honey Harbor that's ever volunteered for us, we could have put them in there for a month, and we would barely have made that kind of a dent on it. So when the community starts getting the capacity and the volunteers and people start getting the resources available to do the work, then we can turn our direction as Georgian Bay Forever to the more difficult things and start to undertake those kind of projects and get them funded. The other nice thing is all of the municipal partners that we worked with from the archipelago, the Township of Georgian Bay, Tay Township, all of the municipal partners have been recognizing this is really an important thing to work with us on. And we've co-branded information sheets for people. We've got funding line items in various budgets for this. And when I realized the 2 days here was going to cost us about $5,000 more than we originally thought, I went to the council at the Township of Georgian Bay on a Friday with a letter, and Monday at council meeting they passed a resolution to give us the extra $5,000 we need. So building that trust, building that partnership, and building that relationship is really critical, and it helps all of us get these kind of things done.
Who owns the truck storage? How much do they cost? Should Georgian Bay Forever have one of those?
Well, the last answer is yes, I would love to have No, but we worked with Janice Gilbert. She started a not-for-profit company called the Invasive Phragmites Control Center. Janice, if you've ever seen the picture of somebody standing in front of a Phragmites stand with a big surveyor's rod, Janice actually worked for the Ministry of Natural Resources and took that picture. She and her husband started a not-for-profit. They got funding from Bruce Power, and they actually bought 2 of these pieces of equipment that you see, and they subcontract out to the Green Streams company for the personnel to actually use the machines and use the equipment. So it's a combination of some philanthropic money and some not-for-profit driven people who really want to kind of make this stuff available. And then it's paid for. We pay for it by hiring them and paying a contract fee to have them on site and do the work. Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Yes, yeah, thanks for the question, and yes, we have it. I'll be brief, but the Township of the Archipelago actually made a deputation to the Ministry of Transportation, talked to the minister. They met at a municipalities conference. There's the parliamentary assistant is actually going to make a visit to the township to actually start to be able to see firsthand this kind of problem. On the second side of it, we've been working for the last 4 years to try to get the ministry in Central Region and Northeastern Region, which are the 2 regions that abut on Georgian Bay, to actually do something similar to what Southwestern Region Ministry people were doing. Because of the the agriculture base down in Southwestern Ontario, they've been spraying the provincial roadways for the last 4 years. The ditches. In Ontario, you can't spray in a wet area. So you can't use herbicides over a wet area. But if you wait later on into the summer when things are dry, you can spray, what was once a wet ditch is now a dry ditch, and they can actually spray for control there. But just when we thought everything was mapped and budgeted for and ready to go on the MTO in Central Region and Northeastern this fall, right now, with the government change, that's just come to a complete halt and been put on hold while the new government kind of wraps its head around where they want to spend the money. We would love to encourage the new government, very respectfully, that if they continue to wait, it's just going to keep costing more and more money to get to this control. And since all of the machinery of the staff level of the ministry is ready to go, if the minister kind of gets involved in that conversation and through the archipelago can kind of make that request a little directly, I think we can kind of get things kicked off and get going again, but that's where we are. So a great question. Ministry's starting to get ready to do its piece. Yes. Yeah, thanks, Blair. So first off, I'm a little reluctant to generate an industry around an invasive plant that we're trying to get rid of. I'll disclose my bias. Yeah. But in Europe, where it has its place in the ecosystem, it's what's used to thatch roofs over there, right? Because it lasts for a long time. It's a cellulose that doesn't break down quickly, so it can actually be used anywhere that cellulose is used. You can make biomass and actually generate electricity from it, or you can feed it to animals. But in Canada, there aren't the 140 herbivores whether they're insects or animals that actually feed on it over in Europe. So what it does here is actually, more damage to our ecosystem because it's indiscriminately able to shut all the other plants down. So we don't want to really generate a use for it. As to how it's disposed of right now, we either get it composted at a municipal composting facility where they can hit the temperatures required to make sure they kill it all, or in some cases they're actually just landfilling it. They're putting it into the landfill and burying it and then monitoring to make sure that nothing grows up around it. So right now we're kind of in eradication mode, so the uses of it I want to kind of keep unpopular so we can insist on getting rid of it. And Sandy, you had a question?
Yeah, do any of the bigger municipalities in the south, like Vaughan, I assume City of Toronto, do they have anything? Because it's not all just on LRT, it's not all 400 series highways. It's all along Major Mac, it's all along Rutherford Road, it's everywhere.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to point out with our mapping is it makes it look like Georgian Bay is the worst place on the planet for Phragmites. That's only because we've mapped every single stand of it out there also. Like we have a highly dedicated group of volunteers and staff that go out and look at it. But every municipality has to come up with a management plan for invasive species. Now that it's listed on the Invasive Species Act, they need to actually have that in their municipal management plan. So that will evolve, but it doesn't exist today. And the problem, living in Toronto, the parks people that are overseeing the forests and natural spaces, it's not their silo to work on, it's the transportation silo apparently at the City of Toronto right now. So sometimes just which silo's handling it and what their priorities are and where they have budget becomes an issue. Again, as was mentioned earlier, I think by Kate, these things at the municipal government level we need to keep talking about, and Chelsea, it was Shannon that mentioned it too, right? Shannon Carto. These are things that you need to kind of keep bringing up and putting in front of your local council and the province, but really just trying to insist that this is an important issue that we're recognizing and it needs to get addressed. From a safety perspective, an 18-foot tall plant isn't like a little bit of purple loosestrife, right? If you can't see at the intersection that you're trying to get into with your vehicle, or the on-ramp, if you go to Ottawa and drive up the 416 set of highways, you can't even see the on-ramps as traffic's coming on. It really literally becomes a safety issue. And then fire hazard and the inability to even spot where a fire hydrant is when the fire department shows up, right? So lots more things on Phragmites that we can do.